Now, have you ever looked at
how it works.
planes and gone, I could fix this? I just don't have the time. Too busy
I
making.
have a design for a plane.
You do?
Yes.
A better design?
I mean, probably. I think it is. Yes.
For a long time, I had reservations. This interview was what made me believe that Elon Musk is a snake oil salesman.
What do you got? What's going on?
Well, I mean, the exciting thing to do would be some sort of electric vertical takeoff and landing supersonic jet.
Electric jets, as a concept, make no sense. Jet engines don't work how most people, including Elon, suspect. The thrust they produce is not generated by the fast spinning fan on the front. The thrust is created by heating the air going through the engine. As the air in the engine is heated, it expands. Thus, a bigger volume of air comes out at the back than what entered it from the front. The fan is one of multiple ways to show air into a jet engine that is stationary. There are plenty of other ways to do it. If you want to see another method, pulse jets are a good example, among many alternative solutions to get air into a stationary jet engine without fans. Here is a video of YouTuber Colin Furze operating his home-built pulse jet. Still, you could use wire heating elements to make an electric jet, just a very shitty one. Problem is that in a combustion-powered jet engine, all the chemical energy is released as heat directly inside the air passing through the jet engine, where it does useful work, accelerating air. With an electric heating scheme, you first store energy in a battery, then release it as electrical current, and only part of that current is turned into useful heat in the airflow. A big fraction is lost inside the battery and wiring, as heat dissipated due to resistance, energy that never contributes to thrust. Thus, you get crippled by the double whammy of low energy density to start with, paired with wasteful energy usage. Jet engines are not optional for supersonic flight. Propellers don't work for making aircraft go supersonic. Sure, you can make the propeller's tips faster than the speed of sound, but it won't make the aircraft move faster than speed of sound. This was amply demonstrated by the infamous XF-84H Thunder Screech aircraft. It didn't go supersonic. Instead, the shock waves shed by its propeller tips were heard from 40 miles away, knocked instrumentation out inside the control tower, made operating crew nauseous, and even made a repairman pass out when the thunder screech rolled by the aircraft inside which the guy was working.
The thing that you would use for vertical takeoff and landing is not suitable for high-speed flight.
Musk is correct. Vertical takeoff and landing, VTOL, doesn't mix well with high speed. For high speeds, you need long, thin propulsion systems. For efficient VTOL, you need a large cross-section, short one. I do mean large cross-section, like the disc-shaped area swept by helicopter rotors. Jump jets like the F-35 or Harrier guzzle fuel when they hover. VTOL clashes with battery power just by itself, even if we ignore supersonic flight. Batteries are heavy, so holding them up in hover drastically reduces the useful weight an aircraft can carry. Without a large, spindly array of rotors, something more like sailplane wings than a compact jet, electric aircraft can't hover. That's why nearly all current eVTOL startups look doomed to go bust. Physics is a merciless judge and does not tolerate aerodynamic design by mood board.
like the way to think about a plane is it's a force balance. So the force balance, so a plane that is not accelerating is a neutral force balance. You have the force of gravity, you have the lift force of the wings, then you've got the force of the whatever thrusting device, so the propeller or turbine or whatever it is, and you've got the resistance force of the air. Now the higher you go, the lower the air resistance is. Air density drops exponentially, but drag increases with the square. An exponential beats a square. The higher you go, the faster you will go for the same amount of energy. And at a certain altitude, you can go supersonic with less energy per mile, quite a lot less energy per mile than an aircraft at 35,000 feet, because it's just a force balance.
Musk's argument is correct. Aerodynamic drag drops when air pressure drops. Unfortunately, lift at a given speed also drops as pressure drops. So you need to fly faster to stay aloft, which cancels out the efficiency gain. Even worse, as your speed increases relative to the speed of sound, drag rises faster than lift from shockwave-related phenomena. As such, you don't get maximum speed for free just by flying higher. The drag reduction from lower pressure is cancelled by the extra drag from flying faster, which you can't avoid if you want to stay aloft at high altitude. Elon is correct that for a given airspeed, you are more efficient flying in thinner air if you can. That's not the same thing as flying in thinner air being more efficient. Staying in denser air lets you fly more slowly and efficiently. If you plan to power an aircraft with batteries, efficiency isn't optional, not if you want to reach anywhere beyond city limits. What he tossed out in this chopped up, under-a-minute soundbite is a rare case of being fractally wrong. No matter how you look at it, or how generous you want to be with your interpretation, Musk's supersonic VTOL battery-powered jet is pure word salad. Elon Musk isn't an engineer by training. He's never earned an engineering degree, much less proved himself a genius designer of machines. At best, he's a genius marketer, with a very questionable track record on the products he promotes. Like a broken clock that's right twice a day. Most of Musk's ventures are fragile, but one of them turned out to be genuinely valuable. That's why I don't think he'll go bankrupt. In this video, I'll explain why people suspect he could, and what they're overlooking. Elon Musk's wealth came from two sources. The one he doesn't like talking about was his father's partial ownership of emerald mines in Zambia. The other was being a founder, not of PayPal or Tesla, but Zip2. So here is a list of things Elon did not do, but likes claiming he did. He didn't found PayPal, despite popular misconceptions. Musk was the CEO of PayPal for a short time, before the board booted him. That was not because he was a founding member. It was because PayPal acquired the old X.com, owned by Musk. Basically, the merger meant Musk got himself a new company, similarly to how the McDonnell-Douglas merger with Boeing gave control over a new company to McDonnell-Douglas's failed management. Instead of what Boeing shareholders hoped for, Boeing acquiring market share. He didn't found Tesla. Yes, Musk was an early investor. He even managed to lawyer and sue his way into being listed as a co-founder. Still, he took no part in the development of the Tesla Roadster, the first car of the company. Not to mention that waging an editorial war on Wikipedia to name himself as sole founder didn't exactly work out. Elon didn't invent self-driving cars. Teslas are not capable of autonomy. The company faces ongoing lawsuits for fraudulently advertising autonomous self-driving technology, which it clearly lacks. He didn't invent reusable vertical landing rockets, let alone reusable rocketry. It was an old idea by the time Musk decided to throw his wealth from Tesla into manufacturing such vehicles. The original, famous, and working vertical landing reusable rocket came out, like many things, from NASA's X series of aerospace vehicles. It was called the DCX, manufactured by McDonnell Douglas. It was first flown in 1993. SpaceX repeated the feat only in 2016, more than 20 years later. Musk didn't invent the subway system. He simply made the idea worse when he decided to create the Boring Company, with the goal of making a subway system that has cars in it instead of train cars. Which is not working well, as the paid driver-to-passenger ratio is markedly worse in a taxi than on a train. Musk also didn't invent pneumatic tube transport, or, as he likes to call it, Hyperloop. It was invented in 1799 by William Murdoch in the UK for conveying small packages and letters to people. Sure, there were attempts to supersize the thing, various atmospheric railway projects. They didn't work out for 200 years. The technology doesn't scale well with size, and the issues with making it big enough to carry humans are numerous enough to fill an entire episode. But well, Thunderfoot already did that when Musk started peddling this idea as his own invention. Despite Musk's claims, he did not have any technical role in Neuralink or in XAI, at least, not any productive role. I won't count the Mecha Hitler incident as a productive role. With claims about Musk out of the way, let's talk about why it could be reasonable to expect him to go bankrupt. Elon has approximately $166 billion in Tesla stock, approximately $168 billion in SpaceX stock, approximately $5.5 billion of Neuralink, approximately $5.5 billion of Boring Company, and approximately $52 billion of X/Twitter stock. I mean, that's how much he could sell said stock for today, as of the release of this video. Problem is that Boring Co. and Neuralink don't even have a roadmap toward a minimum viable product. Digging a tunnel that doesn't collapse with worse capacity than a bus line isn't what Boring Co.'s evaluation is based on. Similarly, surgically opening skulls to allow telepathic movement of a cursor is extremely far from the promises used to justify Neuralink's valuation. Finally, X/Twitter's output is financial loss, due to products such as Mecha Hitler. Thus, it's not impossible to allege that the valuation of these three is nothing but a financial bubble. The companies are financial zombies, kept alive by speculation and cult of personality. Sooner or later, such things run out. What's worse is that Elon's real companies are also in a lot of trouble. Tesla, well, it is simply not what it claims to be. The sum of its stock value would suggest that Tesla is more valuable than all other automotive manufacturers combined. To buy Tesla, I mean all its shares, you would need in the ballpark of $1,280 billion. If we add all other automotive manufacturers together, Toyota's $256 billion, $60 billion of Volkswagen Group, $44 billion from Honda, $27 billion from Stellantis, $130 billion from BYD, it still falls far short of Tesla's price. The problem is that sane/responsible investors want returns sooner or later, in some form like dividends or stock buybacks, not in the form of even bigger idiots allowing them to bail. There's no guarantee they won't be the last person holding the corporate hot potato at the end of the game. To justify such a valuation, Tesla would need to dominate all automotive markets on the globe, pushing out other companies until they were a minority of sales. Tesla promised its stockholders it would accomplish this by offering luxury EVs at affordable prices and full self-driving, which didn't exactly work out. As far as affordable luxury goes, somehow they manage to deliver the opposite. Luxury-priced average, misaligned body panels, corrosion issues, water ingress, and a safety record that reminds people of the Ford Pinto with its self-exploding fuel tank. Oh, I nearly forgot the microtransactions built into this wonder, to sell the car as a service. This is happening at the same time that Hyundai and Chinese brands are beating Tesla in both price and quality, and even legacy European manufacturers are slowly managing to come out with competitive EV models. Thus, market dominance based on value propositions seems like fiction, a dream that people who sunk costs into Tesla stock tell themselves at night. Tesla's remaining hope is full self-driving, which faces similar issues. I mean, it's all talk and no action, so much so that there are multiple class action lawsuits ongoing against Tesla right now. One by investors who feel misled, another one by victims and families. I mean, people who have been run over by self-driving Teslas, which at best have level 2 autonomy. To make this look even dimmer, other companies are also working hard on self-driving cars, from functioning robotaxi competitors to pure self-driving tech companies that plan on selling retrofits like a motive to make the car you already own self-driving. From China to Europe, everywhere that has functioning vehicle manufacturing offers stiff competition. Sure, these are all issues. Regardless, Tesla is profitable, so it won't go bankrupt, would be the answer of most bright-eyed tech bros. Sadly, they are wrong. Elon's swastika advertisement, it goes from 0 to 39 in 2 seconds, at Trump's inauguration, while looking coked out of his mind, well, to say the least, didn't help. Sales dropped over 70% in foreign markets, like Germany. Tesla is profitable in the US while it gets government subsidies. If those disappear, it won't only have issues selling to the don't matter rest of 8 billion people, it will also have issues retaining its domestic 300 million-ish audience. So what remains is SpaceX and Starlink. The issue is that the people who want it can't afford to sustain the service. After all, we're talking about a constellation of 12,000 satellites to ensure global coverage. And, well, SpaceX said their satellites last 7 years. Even if we overestimate that, we're still talking about needing to launch 1,700 satellites a year to sustain the numbers needed. That's going to cost a lot, even if you place decent-sized groups of satellites into orbit with each launch. Not only from the price of launches, but also due to the cost of satellites. Even small AESA antennas on them are a pain to make and cost a lot to manufacture. Even worse, the ground antennas are the same. Even though that simplified version costs $500 to buy, it's unlikely SpaceX can make them for much under $1,500. Basically, every new subscriber starts as a loss until they've paid 7 to 10 months of subscription, assuming the only cost is the antenna they are provided with for $500. So who would be the consumers? In cities, broadband internet is cheap, Wi-Fi is common, and reasons for forking over more than $100 a month for internet barely above dial-up speeds are non-existent. Even in most of the countryside, 5G outcompetes Starlink. Not only does it offer faster upload and download, it's also cheaper. Not to mention how much more convenient it is to carry around a smartphone than a chonker satellite dish. So what remains are truly remote industrial installations, rich world touring yachters, off-road tourers, etc. And things are way worse globally. Alternative services are cheaper, coverage is often better, and people who would benefit most from Starlink, more often than not, lack the funds to buy the service, even if they wanted to. Once the cool early adoption factor wears off, it's a niche product, reserved for remote industrial installations, remote retreats, yachts, and RVs owned by the rich. I strongly doubt that this market is even remotely enough to sustain the satellite internet business. Why do I think, then, that Elon won't go bankrupt? Well, because I agree with the take that military intelligence is an oxymoron. Specifically, that things that military intelligence deems a secret development are rarely secret, or a new development. Same way anyone even remotely familiar with radio astronomy, wink wink, knows what Smarter Everyday was not allowed to talk about on board of US submarines. People with enough knowledge in engineering know that Starlink is a dual-use asset. As the saying goes, what makes for good jam can also brood into moonshine. In this case, we are talking a software-defined and software-steered, so-called active electronically steered array of antennas on each satellite, and laser communication between them, which could be also used for extreme accurate measurement of position of said satellites, enabling aperture synthesis to increase radar performance. That's an asset that makes Hydra's helicarriers from Marvel look rather mild, modest, and non-intrusive. So let's untangle what this previous technobabble meant. Well, the key part to understand is aperture synthesis and radar. The rest of the word soup describes what hardware satellites have that makes it possible to use them as one enormous synthetic aperture radar array. I will be sloppy though. If you are picky about jargon, keep in mind that due to similarities, I will use the SAR acronym both for multistatic and synthetic aperture radars, even if jargon purist military personnel dislike that. First things first. Radio waves used by radar are fundamentally the same thing as light. Light wave, microwaves, or radio waves used by radar, they are all electromagnetic waves. Point of using radio waves for imaging instead of visible light is simple. Under different colors of light, different things stand out. Same way one can pick some things out easier with a colored lens, stuff can stand out in colors not perceptible to the Mark I human eyeball. The easiest way to realize how colors other than what humans can see can be damned useful is thinking about infrared radiation. Infrared thermal sources can be used to make it easy to spot deer for hunting, or to spot which electrical components are broken just by looking at a device. It's of course less obvious why radio waves are a useful color, so let me tell you. Radio waves can do the same effect that visible light only does on oil films on water, like the rainbow effects oil creates when there's a thin layer of oil on a puddle. That happens because the layer of oil is so thin that it's thinner than the wavelength of light. Hence, light that cannot fit in the distance between top and bottom of oil just bounces back. Of course, since oil layer sloshes around its different thickness, so it bounces back different colors, making a nice rainbow. Well, radio waves are useful because distance between the wave tops is much bigger. Radio waves have wavelengths ranging from millimeters to meters. Surfaces show the strongest contrast when the wavelength matches the size of the feature you're trying to see. That's handy because lots of important objects and impacts of human activities fall into that size range. You can get a contrasting outline on gravel where it was crushed by boots, or wheels tracks in the middle of desert, if you shine the correct color of radio waves onto them. The wavelength that bounces back fine from unaffected ground, due to peaks to differing heights in peak of pebbles creating a layer like the oil film, and looks black when flattened by boots or wheels. That's exceedingly useful for mapping, with different wavelength/colors of radio waves working for spotting surface patterns of different sizes. I suspect this kind of radio imaging is what allows Israeli ground assets to successfully execute raids inside Iran, as F-35s of Israel should be capable of mapping the country and seeing what areas were stepped on by humans or machines in the last month. And that allows special forces units to know where are the areas where no one goes. which allows them to move without danger of being spotted. So it's clear, radio imaging is really useful. It has its own difficulties, which is the downside of long wavelength waves compared to visible light. Namely, that the longer the wavelength is, the blurrier small objects depicted in the image will be. Let me explain what I mean. Whenever light waves, radio waves, or any other wave pass through something whose size is roughly the same as the distance between peaks of the wave, they get distorted. If you've ever been in a dark room where the door just barely started to open and a very thin sliver of light leaked through the crack, you likely saw this effect already. As instead of getting a nice beam of light hitting the ground making a stripe with parallel edges, the light fans out in a cone. The smaller the crack, the more it fans out. The more cone-shaped the light coming from the crack is. If the thing through which the waves pass is wider, there is less distortion. If it's much bigger than wavelength, then there is barely any distortion. Well, our problem is that we want to magnify the image, so any distortion and blurs can also get magnified. Radio waves are much longer than light waves, hence they get way blurrier using same-sized telescope. One would need to use huge mirrors for their radio telescope, so that even when the image is magnified you still don't get blurs. Mirrors the size one saw in the now-defunct Arecibo telescope, which was one gigantic radio mirror built into a valley created by a sinkhole in limestone. Its radio mirror was 1,000 feet, 305 meters wide. Well, a satellite that big is not only hard to build, not only would it be extremely costly, it would be also easy to hit, and a single hit would have a chance to make it useless. Well, there is mathemagic that gets around the need to use such enormous mirrors, or lenses. Both militaries and radio astronomers worked hard on making that possible, until they found a way in the 50s. Radio astronomers called it aperture synthesis. Military called it synthetic aperture radar. The idea is the same. One can take multiple blurry radar images at a distance, and, so long as you keep precise track of how and when you took each picture, you can do some mathemagics with pictures and the distance between the places you took them, and make one crisp image from multiple blurry images. Meaning, one can use multiple small radio telescopes placed far apart and get close to the performance of a telescope that's the size of the area covered by this group of smaller telescopes. I nearly forgot. There is one more benefit to having a huge mirror for your radio telescope. A huge mirror collects far more light, or radio waves, than a small one. So you can make images in dimly lit environments, be it the evening for classic cameras, or be it using low energy, hard to detect illumination for your radar. That benefit is present whether you use one giant mirror or pull the same trick with multiple smaller ones using mathemagics. Of course, to get all these benefits, you need to keep extremely precise track of where each picture was taken. Otherwise, you can't work the mathemagic on the blurry images. So with all that background out of the way, let me tell you how it's relevant to Starlink. Why I think Musk can't ever go bankrupt. Starlink satellites have pricey, fancy antennas with extremely good resolution. So-called electronically steered antennas because they aren't turned physically. Instead, you can make the radio beam shine out of them at various angles by changing the setting, without physically moving the antenna. What makes it sus is that Starlink uses laser communication, which accidentally is also extremely useful for very precise distance measurement. Of course, people might say that Starlink satellites do lack the power to illuminate ground under them to be useful. If one uses data from them to form a synthetic aperture, the dim illumination due to low power of radio beams on the satellites is a non-issue. Another problem could be that SAR techniques require enormous computing power on site, which is why F-35s are sometimes called a flying computer, or extreme data throughput to move the images to groundside computing facilities, something Starlink satellites are built to handle. Of course, the true genius of the design is threefold. 1. As talked about, it can create extremely detailed images of Earth. 2. It can record the whole globe 24/7. 3. It can use the radio used for civilian data transmission for illumination. So far, we did not discuss the last point. It's important. After all, if you don't have to shine a specific radio beam to illuminate the target you want to take pictures of, the target doesn't know it's being recorded, which makes it incredibly convenient that civilian data traffic creates a constant, legit illumination source. When your target doesn't know when you are looking, they can't do the usual Cold War practice. When testing sites, like Area 51, suspended operations when enemy satellites were flying over them and taking images. And to top this all off, there is little the adversaries of US can do about Starlink. They don't have justification to shoot them down, as the capability to be used as for radar depends on, did I upload the software to do it? It's possible to revert the satellite back to legit civilian communications infrastructure by a software update, and it gets better. Even if an adversary of the states decides that Starlink is a valid military target, it's still damned hard to destroy them. SpaceX places multiple satellites in orbit with each rocket launch, and shooting them down would require a separate rocket to hit each satellite. In other words, SpaceX can likely rebuild its network faster than US's adversaries can slap satellites out of orbit. All this won't mean that Elon will remain filthy rich due to market value of his stocks. It means he doesn't have to even care about stock value. Pure-play corporations that act as foundations of various industries don't have to care about stock market. For TSMC or Krupp's Steelworks, the stock market is a minor matter. They don't depend on it. People will have to buy steel and chips, regardless of what r/Wall Street Bets thinks. I would say that when you are in Elon's order of magnitude for wealth, then owning stocks from grizzled, time-tested foundations of various industries is preferable to startups, even if nominally they are worth less. With SpaceX's dual-use satellite constellation, Elon arguably became the definitive military intelligence provider. As such, he is unlikely to ever be penniless.